I'm very honoured to be here in London to launch the first Rendezvous littéraire Rue Cambon in English, and there was no doubt for me that we had to dedicate this rendezvous to Virginia Woolf. I'm thrilled to be today surrounded by Jeanette Winterson, Keira Knightley and Erica Wagner to speak about such a fascinating woman. It's hard to find the words to introduce Virginia Woolf, this giant of literature who left us a heritage of such crucial importance. Our aim today is not to do an academic lecture, and thanks to Jeanette, we'll have a really fun time. And we hope to show you how much of a visionary she was, and how much she's relevant today, and how she can still help us face many challenges. Virginia Woolf was a fighter. She fought all her life to challenge conventions of her time and defend women's freedom to write and create. She was above all an activist who faced the social, economic, emotional problems that hindered women with unfailing courage. We simply hope you will come out of this encounter with a more open vision of what a woman can be and with an invincible desire for change so that in our world today, women can access their full creative potential and intellectual freedom. Before we start discussing and entering more in depth in Virginia Woolf's work and life, we first wanted to hear her voice. And Keira, we are extremely happy to have you with us today, and you will be reading an extract from Professions for Women, a speech Virginia Woolf gave at the National Society for Women's Service in January 1931.
When your secretary invited me to come here, she told me that your society is concerned with the employment of women, and she suggested that I might tell you something about my own professional experiences. It is true I am a woman. It is true I am employed. But what professional experiences have I had? It is difficult to say. My profession is literature. And in that profession, there are fewer experiences for women than in any other, with the exception of the stage. Fewer, I mean, that are peculiar to women. For the road was cut many years ago by Fanny Burney, by Aphra Behn, by Harriet Martineau, by Jane Austen, by George Eliot. Many famous women and many more unknown and forgotten have been before me, making the path smooth and regulating my steps. Thus, when I came to write, there were very few material obstacles in my way. Writing was a reputable and harmless occupation. The family peace was not broken by the scratching of a pen. No demand was made upon the family purse. For 10 and 6pence, one can buy paper enough to write all the plays of Shakespeare if one has a mind that way. Pianos and models, Paris, Vienna and Berlin, masters and mistresses are not needed by a writer. The cheapness of writing paper is, of course, the reason why women have succeeded as writers before they have succeeded in any other profession. But to tell you my story, it is a simple one. You have only got to figure to yourselves a girl in a bedroom with a pen in her hand. She had only to move that pen from left to right, from 10 o'clock to 1. Then it occurred to her to do what is simple and cheap enough, after all, to slip a few of those pages into an envelope, fix a penny stamp in the corner, and drop the envelope into the red box at the corner. It was thus that I became a journalist. And my effort was rewarded on the first day of the following month, a very glorious day it was for me, by a letter from an editor containing a cheque for £1, 10 shillings and 6pence. But to show you how little I deserve to be called a professional woman, how little I know of the struggles and difficulties of such lives, I have to admit that instead of spending that sum upon bread and butter, rent, shoes and stockings, or butcher's bills, I went out and bought a cat. A beautiful cat, a Persian cat, which very soon involved me in bitter disputes with my neighbours. What could be easier than to write articles and to buy Persian cats with the profits? But wait a minute. Articles have to be about something. Mine, I seem to remember, was about a novel by a famous man. And while I was writing this review, I discovered that if I were going to review books, I should need to do battle with a certain phantom. And the phantom was a woman. And when I came to know her better, I called her after the heroine of a famous poem, The Angel in the House. You, who come of a younger and happier generation, may not have heard of her. You may not know what I mean by the angel in the house. I will describe her as shortly as I can. She was intensely sympathetic. She was immensely charming. She was utterly unselfish. She excelled in the difficult arts of family life. She sacrificed herself daily. If there was chicken, she took the leg. If there was a draft, she sat in it. In short, she was so constituted that she never had a mind or a wish of her own, but preferred always to sympathize with the minds and wishes of others. Above all, I need not say it, she was pure. Her purity was supposed to be her chief beauty, her blushes, her great grace. In those days, the last of Queen Victoria, every house had its angel. And when I came to write, I encountered her with the very first words. The shadow of her wings fell on my page. I heard the rustle of her skirts in the room. Directly, that is to say, I took my pen in my hand to review that novel by a famous man. She slipped behind me and whispered, "My dear, you are a young woman. You are writing about a book that has been written by a man. Be sympathetic, be tender, flatter, deceive, use all the arts and wiles of our sex. Never let anybody guess that you have a mind of your own. Above all, be pure." And she made as if to guide my pen. I now record the one act for which I take some credit to myself, though the credit rightly belongs to some excellent ancestors of mine who left me a certain sum of money. Shall we say £500 a year? So that it was not necessary for me to depend solely on charm for my living. She would have plucked the heart out of my writing. For as I found, directly I put pen to paper, you cannot review even a novel without having a mind of your own, without expressing what you think to be true about human relations, morality, sex. And all these questions, according to the angel in the house, cannot be dealt with freely and openly by women. They must charm, they must conciliate, they must, to put it bluntly, tell lies if they are to succeed. Thus, whenever I felt the shadow of her wing or the radiance of her halo upon my page, I took up the inkpot and flung it at her. Her fictitious nature was of great assistance to her. She was always creeping back when I thought I had dispatched her. Though, I flatter myself, the struggle was severe. It took much time that had been better have been spent upon learning Greek grammar or roaming the world in search of adventures. But it was a real experience. It was an experience that was bound to befall all women writers of that time.